I actually was thinking, hey, in my mind, did we get away with this? Oh, God damn it.
Never, JJ. We'll never get away from
It
it.
it won't be an animal stream until we mention that part of the body.
No, it just wouldn't be a Monday AMA if we're not talking about poo or buttholes.
Yes. Listen, I didn't know that you called your ferret butthole for the longest time beforehand, and
The butthole, yeah.
I remember doing the dishes and just hearing your voice come through slightly, and all I heard was "It's butthole." But I thought you said the other thing. I was dying on my kitchen floor. I was like, what even context was that statement?"
Have you seen the clip where I accidentally flashed Fisher's actual butthole on
Yes.
stream? That was pretty brutal.
God. It's like when the otters flash their lipstick. No,
Gross.
no. We already had an slight incident today. It was amazing.
Oh boy.
All right. I think people are still jumping on. Although YouTube lies, it says I have one viewer, and then it's like 20 viewers. I'm like, we're waiting. Hold on for. Oh. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another stream, a creature feature with Reiha and KP, our resident animal expert. And today, I forget all of a sudden, instantly. Oh, wild animals kept at home. Is that the one? Is that the topic we were discussing today?
Just
What-
just kind of like the difference between wild animals and those under human care, because we had some there's been a couple times where we've talked about, I think this kind of stemmed for the person who wanted this topic, was that Wally the sea otter, I've mentioned that his appearance and his like general body condition was so much worse than any of the other animals that I've ever seen, and that wasn't just due to his gunshot wounds, it was due to a life living out in the wild. So I think that's kind of where it stems from, and then there's obviously a lot of other topics
Yes. And
that kind of go along with that. So
I hate to
we're
say,
looking at puppies today. So
yes, we're looking, as you can see, and I think we're looking at the same puppies, the warrior puppies, the two of them. Oh no, there's three of them. Oh my gosh. But I think one of the things I was noticing, we constantly in Africa, I always get this question from overseas about the lions in my backyard, or do we keep wild animals? And I can honestly say I've seen more wild animals that shouldn't be kept as pets in the United States than anywhere else in the world. Florida, let's go to Florida. Tigers, weird animals that I'm like, what is the thing with raccoons? Is that an actual pet in the United States? And why are they so fat?
yeah, it's a kind of a more common thing.
Gosh.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, there's this, I think that for everybody there's a kind of a lure to like having relationships with animals, and so there's like some valid stuff going on there. But obviously there are, if you don't know anything about raccoons, you probably shouldn't try to keep raccoons. So,
which you've mentioned that about ferrets. If you don't know anything about ferrets,
yeah,
don't go get ferrets.
So it kind of everything goes with the same territory around here. But anyway, that's sort of the subject matter. Yes. I know we have quite a few questions, it sounds like,
from Reiha
that were submitted beforehand. But if you have any other questions, feel free to type them in chat. And yeah.
Absolutely. And as always, as a courtesy, we'll try to get to the questions that were actually posted early. So guys, if you want your questions most definitely answered, make sure you follow KP's Discord and my Discord. We post the AMA question form there and ask your questions there early, so we know what to be asking in the next week. And then yes, we will get to live questions, as KP said. So first of all, I would like to say someone already mentioned butthole in my chat. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, KP. Thank you, Reiha. It's like I had to put it in chat. But let's get off to the first question.
All right.
Our first question this morning is, do the staff at MMR interact as little as possible with animals they think will be released?
Yeah, so that's usually like the first rule in animal rehab. So yeah, absolutely. Animals that we usually have a pretty good idea when an animal comes in about whether or not it's going to be releasable or not. There is some level of interaction that has to happen. So for instance, with like the harbor seal pups, usually those animals are releasable but they still require tube feedings and stuff like that. So then you've got interactions that are happening on a regular basis, but those interactions are very negative. The pups don't enjoy being tube fed, right? And so that's, in this instance, that's okay, because then they associate humans with really awful, horrible things that happen, and then they don't want to be around them anymore.
Oh wow.
So yeah, I mean, I think that MMR, as much as possible, tries to limit their interactions with animals and keep animals wild where possible. And then you have other animals where they get a pretty good idea. Like when Joey came in, okay, well, he's not a releasable animal, so we might as well have him associate very positive things with humans. And so, but yes, if an animal is thought to potentially be a releasable animal, staff are going to try to do their best to not try to habituate that animal to humans.
So. Okay, so if I can put a relationship question, what are the preventions taken for one of the, obviously the most popular topics is Quatsi, who is she staying all that, and how do you as caregivers use that sort of context when looking after an animal that you're not sure is going to be released yet?
Yeah, so the sea otters are hard because it very much depends on what they need. Like if they need grooming, how do you do that without grooming them? Yes. So so I think that even though there was like an initial maybe we can release her kind of hope, I think the caregivers there and the vet staff
pretty much know.
were pretty aware that was not going to happen. So yeah, you really just like err on the side of, and sometimes it's as easy as like, okay, well, just don't go up and hold them like a baby and snuggle them, and like you can still give proper care to them without necessarily like petting them and like really kind of
building that
introducing
bond,
that human presence. Yeah, exactly. So and it just boils down to like we just do our best. You just do your best. And they have to take care of the animal, and that's the first priority, is keeping the animal alive and stuff like that. So that's the priority, and then you do your best not to try to treat it like a human child. But I mean, there is a certain level of socialization that these animals need too, right? Especially when they're younger, and social animals like like sea otters and stuff like that would normally be with their moms. So yeah, but yeah, no, Quatsi is not going to be a releasable animal. So
I think half the YouTube channel and your channel just went woohoo, but we understand. But that
yeah, I mean, I think that it's fine to be excited about meeting a new member, but also understanding that that it would have been much better, and that
of course.
And that so it's fine. Like as obviously as humans,
it's one less otter in the ocean where it's supposed to be, but obviously
so I think it's fine to everybody's a little excited, and I think that's fine as long as we understand that it would have been really a beautiful story if she was able to go back out.
Absolutely. I think that would have been a triumph story if she was able to go back. But that must, I was just going to follow up, is that something that is not very easy for caregivers? I mean, we just assume they go in there and that they know all the answers, but that must be quite I wouldn't say physical, but a sort of a mental thing, like how am I going to treat this animal? Like how can I resist, not necessarily cuddling, but using like, am I doing too much? This animal won't be releasable. Is there ever any struggle with that in these sort of cases where the animal's uncertainty?
Yeah. I've seen a little bit more of that with like birds of prey and the raptor rehab.
Oh wow.
Place that I worked with, just because like especially with younger birds,
yes,
they can very easily imprint on humans, so there was a lot of precautions taken to we've all seen like this silly like bird hand puppet that like feeds the birds, but like the purpose of that is not maybe that birds don't actually think that the hand puppet is a bird, but they just don't think that it's a human feeding them. And so yeah, I mean, and there is an absolute real fear of the animals not being like, you see it sometimes. I've seen a lot of videos from Monterey Bay, California, and Monterey Bay Aquarium does an
Mm.
amazing job, and they are usually very successful in releasing their sea otters. But we've all seen the videos of sea otters with flipper tags hopping up on people's kayaks. Well, I
Yes.
guarantee you that was a rehabbed sea otter that's just a little bit too comfortable with humans. And if it goes a step further and they're following people or they start biting people or it becomes a little bit more of a situation, then the government can step in and say you need to go back out, capture that animal, pick them back
And
up.
bring it back.
So yeah, it is possible that that you can fail in that, and then the non-releasable nature or the releasable nature of that animal can essentially be revoked if they're becoming a problem animal. And vice versa. It is not really super common. Willow's just kind of asking if it can go the other way, where an animal is non-releasable, but then later they decide it is releasable. That's much harder because at that point you've only gotten worse down your rabbit hole of really habituating the animal to human care. So I've never seen it go that way, but it can definitely go the other way, where you're like, okay, this animal was maybe not actually ready for release, and that would happen sometimes with the birds as well. So yeah, it's just such a gray area. There's no black and white, and that's why facilities usually try to give it some sort of structure, some sort of black and white structure by saying, okay, if an animal is under human care for 6 months or more, then it is a non-releasable animal, and they just draw that line, even though obviously some animals would behave differently and maybe some animals would be fine, but they have to draw a line because you can't just like gray area everything. It becomes very confusing.
Okay.
So.
Actually,
I feel like that was a really long
yeah.
answer or non-answer to a question, but
But it was informative because, funny enough, I actually got recommended that video you spoke about with the otter on the.
yeah.
I was like, wow. Okay.
Yeah, somebody
Yeah.
somebody in chat posted it, and I went and watched it, and I'm like, I know exactly what this is, and hopefully it'll be fine, but that's not a normal otter behavior, right?
Yes, to just jump on the kayak and like I'm gonna groom right here and nap. Okay, I think I've stolen most of the questions from Reiha's side. Please, Reiha, take the floor.
Yeah, sorry, Reiha.
Yeah.
Okay. Our next questions. I'm gonna generalize this because this is
Yeah.
referring to Wally, and there's just way too many questions if we make it individual.
Mm-hmm.
So the general base of this is Wally being a rescued blind otter due to what had happened to him. What was it like having him at the aquarium? And how did you manage to train him in any way?
Yeah, so great question. So for those of you that don't know, Walter Wally was a sea otter that was shot by somebody in the face and also in his hind legs, and so he was blind. But at the time he came in, he was already probably somewhere around 11 years old, just loosely, I guess, from our veterinarians. So, so yeah, he was an elderly animal, and he had been wild his whole life. Yeah, so having a blind animal under human care, guys, honestly, I think working with blind wild animals, is much easier than
Really?
working with the ones that you've been raising since like they were infants. And I'll tell you why. So, wild animals are they have survived that long because they know how to learn, and they learn fast, because there is no other way to survive out in the ocean. It is not an easy place to live, and so they are very quick learners. So that's something that I find. I find that with I found it with Wally. I found it with Senor Cinco, and I find it with Jessica the seal. Our wild animals are just better learners, because the animals that live with us from the day that they're born, they never have to worry about anything. There's never any risk to their survival at all. Food is always just there. It's available. They can have as much of it as they want. So, whereas Wally and Senor Cinco are extremely food motivated animals, and they will basically just do anything for you just to make sure that they're getting that food, because in their heads, and even though they don't know there's been a switch, but in their minds, that food may just be gone one day, and they're gonna have to figure out how to get it. So training those guys is actually quite a bit easier. Yes, they are blind, but I also find that this makes the relationship that you build with the animal happens very, very quickly, because they essentially have to trust you, because they're blind, and there's nothing, we have to take them with us, show them where they're going to go, and they have to just trust that we're well, basically in their case, they're just trusting that we have a lot of food that's going to be reinforcing for them, and we're going to make it worth their time. But so I find those animals very, very easy to train. It is a little bit of a challenging sort of experience, and working with Wally was definitely, there are things that we would be very careful of, that, like, everybody's seen, like, I've booped Mac on the snoot. I would never have done that with Wally, even if he was blind.
Oh,
And he almost
yeah.
had no teeth too, and I still would never have done it, because yeah, he is a wild animal, and he's not, Mac has been 100% raised by humans, and he's extremely, used to people just like loving on him and stuff. And that's not the case with the wild animals. So there's, of course, like differences like that, but I find that training those wild animals is way easier than the animals that we've been raising, that don't care, that they're just like, whatever, like, as if you're not going to feed me, human, why don't you just give me that food? Like, I'm not going to do what you want, because you're going to give it to me anyway.
Now,
and they know that.
I
So
hate to put it so bluntly, do you feel that the animals from the wild things on that are more inherently intelligent, or just have better survivor skills that they can understand? If I don't do this, nothing's going to happen. Or
yeah, so it's just I don't know if it's like better intelligence, but it is better. You know how, like, it's such a hard concept to kind of describe,
like
because
Bear
it's like
Grylls can survive in the wild, we can't.
Right, but I mean, like, it's more like just the ability to learn, like, to problem solve is something that you're not born with, and you really have to like, your life has to be of a certain way that makes it conducive to you learning. And so, like, our animals that we've raised, they do okay, but they're essentially not raised to know how to learn new things. Yes. Because they just get to live their lives and do whatever they want. So
it's like having a sheltered child. So
that's kind of like the difference. Yeah, and yeah, we've spoiled them, exactly. And so but the animals out in the ocean, it was a matter of life and death whether or not they could learn, and learn fast. And so their ability to problem solve and to think through things, and to be observant, to understand that, okay, I'm doing something, and my action is causing a reward or causing a non-reward to happen. Like, those are kind of the differences. Whereas an animal, that we've raised might just think, well, I didn't get food for that. Oh, well. Whereas the other animals are going to be like, okay, that didn't work. Let me try this. This is slightly different. Okay, that I got a little bit for that. Okay, great. Okay, I'm going to do this just a little bit more. Maybe they're looking for this. And then, and just, like, sort of working through that and remembering that too. So.
Okay, well. Yeah. We can move to the next question, but I'm amazed that every single time we have these things, you blow my mind from a human perspective. Like, oh my God, humans are like that too. We are not born to problem solve. Like, yeah,
Absolutely.
the person that lives in the street and survives is actually better at surviving than someone that stays home. Oh my God. Like, you make my brain explode from those kinds of things. Next question, please.
Reiha?
I think she ran away.
Sorry.
Like, well, screw this. I'm not even here.
Nope, the seaweed was fighting back.
Oh. Okay.
Okay, so in relation to that question about Wally, I kind of wanted to generalize this because it does come up. But if you have a rescued animal that is not releasable, how do you go about introducing it to the animals that are already under your care?
Yeah,
because their behavior is probably a bit different in general.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, there can definitely be concerns about that. Like, so a lot of it just kind of depends on your animals and their personalities. But say, for instance, like introducing Senor Cinco to some of the other. We don't have any other California sea lions, but some of the other stellar sea lions um, are were introduced to Cinco, but there was a lot of concern that he, even though he's smaller than them and blind, that he could. Oh my gosh, this puppy is dreaming so hard right now. What do you think he's doing? He's chasing something. What a cutie. But like that he could actually hurt them. And in some cases, like we've definitely seen some bite marks on the other sea lions that were like, this is from Senor Cinco. But honestly, sometimes we have to ride a line between like being cautious and making sure that we're, taking precautions, and also letting the animals be animals. So in that case, even though we knew that from time to time animals were getting bites from Senor Cinco, we're like, well, they better freaking learn to not do whatever they were doing that pissed him off. Also, you can avoid him very easily. He's blind. So yeah, there's definitely, but we are always checking over their bodies and making sure that there wasn't anything really seriously wrong. But at the same
Mm.
time, those animals just need to learn. They need to learn that if I jump on his back, he's going to bite me, and that's just the way that it is. So maybe I won't do that anymore. So you kind of ride a fine line of, trying to make sure that everybody's safe, but also not trying to like overly mother them, like, like cat my mom smother all the animals, because some of it, they can really deal with their social situations better than we can micromanage their social situations for them. But yeah, it's definitely a little bit more of a tense situation, I think, when you're introducing like an adult wild animal to some of your animals who don't know, who don't know that if like, oh, usually when I jump on the other sea lions backs, they just like roar at me, but this one he bites. So um so there's some of that going on. But yeah, it's really just a case by case basis. Like there's not like a manual for like how we do these things. A lot of it's just experience and just what we think is going to happen, and then throwing away what we think is going to happen because that isn't what happened, and trying again with something else, um
Yes.
stuff like that. I hope that doesn't answer, but sort of answers your question as usual.
It works. It makes sense because it's the touch and go kind of thing. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
JJ, anything on your side? Or you want me to keep going?
No, okay. I was actually going to mention, I think we have webcams. You featuring the same webcam, but we featuring two different angles of the puppies. I was like so confused for a second there.
Oh, really?
That
You
is
got a
so.
different angle?
Yeah, I got a different angle of the warrior canine.
Oh,
Unless they have a lot
that's
of nets.
exciting.
But carry on. Sorry. Yes, please go ahead. Rhea, I almost forgot your name for 10 seconds.
He's too excited
Okay.
by puppies.
The puppies.
Our next question is, if an animal that's under human care has offspring, would that baby also be as robust as a wild born animal in terms of
Hmm.
genes and immune system?
Oh man. Well, again, I've never guys, we should like write down the amount of times I'm actually able to like answer your questions with like a yes or no. I think it's happened a couple times, but like, so this is so hard of a question because there are instances where yes and there are instances where no. So um in general, animals under human care going through a pregnancy are never going to have a lack of food. There are probably, supplementary vitamins and all kinds of extra prenatal care that can be given to pregnant animals, to make sure that the baby has the best chances possible. And then also, once that baby is born, it has an unlimited supply of food available to it because mom has food and can make, as much milk as possible. And in general, like they're given every opportunity to grow and be, uh as big as, as humanly possible. Not that that necessarily equates to like robustness, I guess, but As far as genes go, the genes are usually pretty heavily monitored under human care. Um, so you're not going to have like inbreeding or anything like that going on. So you would probably have very good genes. And actually, like, you know, contrary to popular belief, like out of the ocean, like nobody's monitoring that. So yes, like in animals like sea lions, it's not going to be super likely to happen and stuff like that. But then you've got animals like the killer whales off of our coast here who are suffering greatly due to inbreeding because they don't care. The animals don't have like a concept of this, right?
Yes.
It's just like, you know, it
Like,
feels good.
you're male, I'm
Yeah.
female, let's do this.
Yeah, exactly. So and so that's causing a huge problem for our local killer whale populations off the coast of BC. So like yes and no. Yes, there's like a larger population for them out in the ocean, so like theoretically there's a less likelihood of like crossed over genes, but because in zoos and aquariums you know exactly where everybody's genes came from, and there are literal like scientists telling you to breed these two animals together because we think that'd be really great for the gene pool. It's, you know, it's kind of again, yes and no. Is my answer to that question. So and like out in the ocean, yeah, like you've got the animals that are breeding are going to be the ones who fought for that right and who survived and who had the mental like capacity to be the biggest and the baddest, because especially in males, only like 15% of like male sea lions, for instance, ever actually get the opportunity to breed because all the other, you know, only the biggest baddest get to do that. So you've got like definitely, you know, good problem solvers, and those types of things, which would not necessarily be traits that you would be selecting for under human care. So maybe under human care you're getting more of like the like physically healthy, and maybe out in the ocean you're getting more of like the mentally healthy. I don't really have like science to back that up. That's literally me just like saying something, but so don't quote me on Twitter or anything, but
don't at you.
but yeah, don't at me. But yeah, I mean that's kind of that's a very interesting question, and that's my non-answer to that question. Have a great day.
And it'd be like, so was that a yes or no? But I think basically what you're trying to summarize is that with otters in captivity, in the way that they are in the wild, there's yes and no's to every question. It's basically a measure of pros and cons.
Yeah, there's no, it's all gray area. There's like
yes,
very
they'll be
few
free,
black.
but they're gonna be doing some inbreeding. But yes, they're in captivity, but everything's gonna be planned and they'll be stronger. So it's a
Right.
Moving on.
All right. To the next question that
Reiha,
I
please break the silence.
This one's a little complicated, I believe, but it's what are the differences and challenges of caring for animals that have different levels of imprinting on humans?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, there can be so many, like so many that you can't even, like I can't even begin to scratch the surface on this. But like just like some examples, like real life personal examples off the top of my head. At the Raptor Rehabilitation Center, we had a imprinted ferruginous hawk, which, if you don't know, is like the biggest hawk. It's like basically an eagle-sized hawk. And what had happened is some people had taken it out of the nest and tried to raise it and have a ferruginous hawk. And that obviously, then they were like, holy shit, this is a scary animal. Like, I don't want this anymore. And so, but then by the time that we get it, it's an animal that is too imprinted on humans to be released out into the wild. And that animal had some serious, like, the main thing is that they're not afraid of people. It's one of the nice things about working with, you know, animals that aren't really imprinted on humans, is that they have an innate sort of like fear of people. And that sounds bad, but it's actually quite good in a lot of cases, because it means that they're not prone to being like aggressive or anything like that with humans, because they would way rather just like leave them alone. So this bird was challenging because it could attack you. And it also, whatever, I don't know what its situation was or who had taken it from a nest, but it very much only liked women. So only women at this facility could handle this bird. Which is challenging because you don't always have like you
Yes.
can't always, so then we have to plan our staffing around this bird, and make sure that there is a woman on site who is qualified to take care of this bird, because she just won't tolerate men in there. So that's an instance of that. Elfin, sea otter at the aquarium, is also an instance of maybe just a little bit too strong of imprinting. He was like allowed to crawl around and snuggle with humans until he was like 2 or 3 years old, and so then he just thinks that that's his that he can do that, and that's his like his right to do that. And so that causes problems. He also didn't like men. I don't know what it is about men, something about men. But
Wow.
so that became a little bit of an issue as well. It wasn't quite as bad as like there has to be a woman around to work him, but it's just like the men have to be a little bit more careful. So yeah, I mean I know there's stories of a killer whale. Here, this one's for you, JJ. We had a killer whale who only liked men and wouldn't deal with women. So
there
there's
we
that
go.
too. So that can happen. So anytime she would even see a woman like get close to her, she would basically throw like a large killer whale hissy fit. And so so there's some challenges like that with like having animals habituated to human care and things that you would never even think about. They can be problems, but mainly them just being way too comfortable. Like you want them to be a little, you don't want them to be, they're not puppies, and so they need to be not comfortable like crawling into your lap and stuff like that is ideally because these animals are not they're not domesticated animals. These are wild animals. Even if they've third generation under human care in a zoo, it is still a wild animal because they're not being like we're not breeding out the wild animal. In fact, you want the animal to be still an elephant or still whatever. So yeah, it's not like a domestication process, so it's definitely shouldn't ever be treated like a pet. Half the time when I get done talking, I don't even remember what the question was.
As long as the viewers do. As long as the viewers know. Oh my gosh. Oh, sorry, I see one. Oh, this isn't a question, just someone saying I follow Pacific Assistant Dogs, PADS, and they often have live streams of puppies from days old. Oh, 8 weeks old. We'll definitely have to stream that next time. But yeah, maybe the next. Oh, do you see on stream, by the way, KP? There is a cat invading the puppies.
I do. I see it.
It's a big cat. Jeez,
it is a big cat.
I was like, what in the heck? Okay, moving on, Reiha. If you want to hit the next question.
Our next question is, what are the challenges in helping animals in human care who are non-releasable, but who would be living a very active life, roaming and hunting or grazing over a much larger territory every day than a zoo or aquarium can provide?
Sorry. I'm gonna need you to do
yeah,
that.
I was even like, what? Let's try that again.
I'm sorry.
No, it's not
not
you,
at
it's
the
the question.
capacity
You
this
just-
morning to
Not your fault.
edit
No,
as I usually do.
I was,
but...
I was also just kind of like trying to talk to chat at the same time, and so I got a little confused.
And then looking at puppies.
Go ahead. One more. Uno mas. One more time.
Okay, so let me just try to summarize this. When you have an animal that's under human care and that's non-releasable, what are the challenges of it where this animal would actually be living a much more active life in the wild because they're hunting and grazing over larger territories?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. All right, I get it. So there's lots of challenges. So yeah, that is a challenge that normally they would get an enormous amount of exercise, and they have to eat according to that exercise that they would be getting. So under human care, we have to watch for obesity, absolutely. So there are lots of things that we can do to encourage exercise with the animals and encourage swimming and stuff like that. And then we're also monitoring diet. So it is probably likely that our animals eat a little bit less than they would out in the wild because they don't really need as much. Because yes, like you said, like it's definitely a little less it's a less strenuous of a place, right? And there are no predators to try to escape from, and you don't have to catch your food. It is available. So that's when we do things like enrichment feeds, freezing their feeds or hiding food around, or even just scatter feeds, throwing fish into the water. That fish is flipping around and sinking down to the bottom, and they have to swim and try to grab onto it and stuff like that. So that can help promote exercise. Even some of the training that we do, different behaviors, whether they're high energy behaviors, that's promoting exercise. There's no doubt that there's just nothing that we can do. It's never going to be the wild, and so I think that understanding that, and then just understanding that it is a different place and there are different challenges. So obviously our animals are never going to get eaten and they're never going to starve, but yes, they're not getting that kind of exercise, and there are definitely different challenges there. So yeah, monitoring diet is really important. Obesity in animals under human care is a big problem. I mean, everybody's seen obese pets. It's a huge problem. And so that's something that we are always trying to make sure is not doesn't become one of our problems. But yeah, that's what I think like are probably the main challenges. And then a lot of people like think about like or say things like, oh, aren't they bored? If being bored means not being chased by a killer whale, yes, that is more boring. It's definitely very interesting to have predators and to have to fight for your food, but it's not like a life that I'm interested in.
I don't want that kind of
human,
excitement either.
yeah, so yes, there are challenges, and we are always trying to provide enrichment, and I think it's silly, if we like, I will never say that being under human care is better than being out in the ocean, but I will always say it's very different. And so there are different challenges associated with each with each set of animals. And I think there are things that we can do when we do enrichment. We have a bunch of toys. We have all kinds of things that we can do that stimulate the minds of our animals. And it's done obviously we can't simulate that there's a predator chasing you and you should run really fast. But the enrichment that we do kind of supplements that in a more positive way. So yeah, there are challenges, and definitely like making sure that the animals are getting exercise and are not being sedentary. Because I tell you what, if I have the option, I would just be sedentary on my couch. I have a backlog of video games I'm trying to get through, and so it's one of those things. There's definitely challenges with having animals under human care. It is not 100% just like unicorns and butterflies, but I think understanding that those challenges exist and like understanding the limitations of animals under human care is a huge first step. And then it's kind of like admitting the problem is the first step, like admitting that we can always be doing better and we should always be thinking about that is something that I try to practice.
But I think you raise a good point, because I mean the biggest reason why we have such an issue with health problems on the human side is that a lot of us don't have that exercise, and I think that falls back. I was just talking about the fat raccoons, the really, really big raccoons in the wild. Like I mean in captivity, it's amazing how huge they get, and it's actually it's funny to watch, but I don't think that's healthy.
Right. Yeah.
And and I mean this sort of information is helpful. Like your animals need to always be monitored. I mean, my bearded dragon even got put on a little bit of a diet and things like that, but that's because you're always monitoring it. You make sure like you're not getting too chubby. Yeah, it is a bit of a challenge. Next question. Oh, the puppies are dreaming. Next question.
I know. It's pretty.
There is a part 2 to this
Okay.
question.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, what are the ethical controversies about keeping certain types of animals under human care versus the research benefits to help their species
Mm.
that can only be known by studying them
Yeah. I
in
mean,
human care?
this is the age-old question, right? And so much of it is going to be opinions and what, like, honestly, I'd rather, maybe we can, because I don't want to run out of too much time here, but like this is a huge discussion and I'd love to have it with, because I feel like this is a discussion rather than just me answering a question, because there's not a right answer to this question. And so I don't know if you guys are okay with it too, like maybe after the stream we can just have a big, like, my Chad and I can have a big chat discussion on this and what you guys think, and I can play devil's advocate about on either side, you know, about the things that we think. But I think that would be maybe a little bit better than just me, because
Like it can't be answered in one
honestly I'll
question.
end up rambling for like 25 minutes. So I think it'd be better to have as a discussion
Highlight
point
it
if you guys don't
so
mind.
we can keep it for later.
Yeah. I love it though. I'm excited about it.
No, I agree with that. Especially, we also don't want to, for the sake of answering a question, not have a heavy discussion where it needs to be had. So I agree with that. And yes, and of course
we'll go into Monday TED Talk after this.
Yeah,
After
Perfect.
the AMA.
Monday
Perfect.
TED Talk part 2. But then I will ask in advance, people, you will need to jump over to KP's Twitch, because I'm going to have load shedding after this, which is a South African problem we don't need to discuss. But that means I'm going to be sitting in the dark. We get our power cuts on purpose. Every so often. But definitely something with having discussion after we're done with this part. But let's move on to the next question.
Before we move on, I just wanted to say that in a lot of the questions, the word captivity is coming up, and I'm trying to avoid using the word captivity because of the negative encompassment of it. Like, there's just so much negativity in using that word, and I would rather just say under human care.
And
So
I've been responsible for that this chat.
I'm rereading things, but
I have to say, like,
it is just one of those words that has a lot of negative connotations.
Unfortunately,
surrounding it,
which shouldn't really be, but
but it is.
Okay, so our next question is, can any wild species of animal be trained and domesticated as a pet?
Yeah. So first things first with this question, we need to talk about what the word domestication means. Because domestication is different than just, like, if you happen to find a fox puppy and it grows up with your house and it just lives happily with you guys for the rest of your life. That is not a domesticated fox. So domestication is, and I don't have like a definition in front of me, but this is a long-term process that happens that is actually, through breeding, changes the animal into something that it was not. So for instance, these cute little puppies, these are domesticated wolves, right?
Yes.
So you wouldn't want to have a wolf in your house, but these are domesticated through like hundreds and thousands of years of breeding to make the animal something different. So same with like cows, like dairy cows. There are not wild dairy cows like roaming the world anywhere. Those are domesticated animals. So that's sort of the difference there. So it's a little bit of a tough question because, hey, sure, I think that through like organized breeding, you could probably domesticate anything. Because it's just science. It's just changing their genetics to make, but this is what you're talking thousands of years in the future for domesticating. Look, Reiha's got the actual, was I right, at least? Multi-gen relationship in one organism. Yeah. So essentially it's just a longer form thing. It's not the act of just like, so any of the animals that I work with at the aquarium, those are not domesticated animals. Joey is a wild sea otter.
Yes.
He is not domesticated by any means. Now he is habituated to animal care, or to human care. So that is probably the difference there. So then if we're talking, because I think what the question was more asking was like, can you keep anything under human
As a
care?
pet,
Did it specifically say pets as a pet? Okay.
It says as a pet.
Yes.
Ooh, okay. So sure. Like I think everything is possible. Is it like a good idea? No. Like if we're just talking like, is it physically possible? Yes, but I don't think that like sometimes these things aren't a good idea. But then when you look at some animals that have been like unsuccessfully, like great white sharks, for instance, is a big, you know, people have tried to house great white sharks and have been unsuccessful housing them in zoos and aquariums. But I don't think that means it's impossible. What that means is they're not doing it right. And so there's something that we're missing, something that the animal is missing, that is causing it to not be able to be healthy and happy under human care. So I do think it is possible to change the way that we're doing things, and that's part of the industry, is always trying to change to be better and to do better. And yes, it's a weird question, because I think what I should say is no, and stop trying to bring raccoons into your house. You know, it's kind of like the feel that I get from the question. But like, yeah, it is possible, but I don't think that it's you know, and it's also possible that people can like have like insane amounts of money and actually take really good care of, you know, whatever, like a squirrel that they found that was injured, and that squirrel lives a happy, healthy life. Those things happen, and it is like totally possible. But for the general population, it's not a good idea, because general population is not going to do their research and spend thousands of dollars to make sure that they have the, you know, exact most awesome squirrel habitat in their house, you know, those types of things. So
they generally buy it as an exhibition, or just as the generic form of a pet. Like, I have this thing in my house that once in a while I give attention to, or just look at.
Yeah, and it's gotta be like, what are the reasons that you want to have these wild animals as pets? Like, just because it's kind of cool and kind of different is not a good reason in my mind. So yeah, so anything is possible if you pour enough money and enough thought and enough research into it. But likely no, you know.
But I think the point is there is that, as you mentioned, as much as Joey is habituated, you could never keep him as a pet. It'll
right.
I mean, just the maintenance side of it. Can you imagine?
I mean, and that's because you don't have a, you know, 100,000 gallon 11 degree Celsius saltwater pool in your house. Now, if you have, you know, 30 extra $million lying around, maybe you could build one. But like, you know, and maybe you could educate yourself on what a sea otter needs. But of course, that's not going to happen. So it doesn't, you know, it's like one of those things where like, sure, it's possible, but it's never going to happen, because it's, you know, you can't keep him in a bathtub.
Yeah, that's right. So, you can't even keep them in chlorine water. I remember the last time you said. So you can't even put them in your pool.
No chlorine at all.
Yes.
And it's really bad for their fur. Very specific filtration parameters surrounding their habitats that nobody knows anything about, because, you know, that's the thing that's like silly to me, is like when, you know, people try to have these animals, like, as I wouldn't keep a raccoon in my house because I know absolutely nothing about raccoons. You know, so it's you know, and like I know a lot of animals, but I don't know anything about raccoons, so I don't want to have one, because I can't do it any justice. So,
and I'm sorry,
not to mention that you're not legally allowed to do these things.
Oh no, you absolutely are. But
But
as you mentioned, I mean,
depending on where you're at, but
there's a whole NGO we support for street dogs, and those dogs ended up on the street because someone bought a dog at the pet store and decided, oh, I don't want this dog anymore. And as much as we talk about wild animals, a lot of humans are not capable of even looking after domesticated animals. And this is why it's such a big topic to have. I mean, we've had that joke before. You told people, do your research to buy ferrets, and people went out and bought ferrets instead of listening.
I hope they're doing a good job, though. But yeah, I mean, the thing is too, like even for domesticated animals, like I had big like dog fever the other day. So I don't get baby fever, but I like really wanted a dog, and this is a couple of years ago, and so Double and I babysat like a dog, an elderly dog, for about 2 weeks, and at the end, like I was fully, well, at the very beginning, I was expecting that at the end of the 2 weeks we would just adopt her because she was looking for a home.
Yes.
And at the end of the 2 weeks, I wanted to die. I was like, okay, having a dog is not for me. This animal is so needy. I can't deal with this. And so we found her a really awesome home somewhere else. Some people that really want her and are really gonna do a good job. And so I think that that's part of, like, you know, you sometimes you have to, like, what I thought that I wanted and then the experience that I was getting from having a dog were two very different things, and they did not align with my lifestyle. And that's just a dog. And this wasn't even a puppy, guys. This was like a 13-year-old dog, and I was just like, wow.
Oh,
this is
they
too much.
they get
So,
very different at that age. That I know. They start getting a bit crazy and losing their minds too. So it's not an easy thing to look after.
yeah.
Would you recommend for people in this sort of thing that want to interact with these animals to rather go for volunteer programs, or is that also something that is like?
Yeah. No, I mean, I always recommend that people volunteer. Volunteering your time is such an awesome way to add value to your communities and stuff like that. And it can also give you a good idea of you know, the type of work that goes into it, and you then get an experience, and
Yes.
you're taking care of animals or doing, you know, whatever you're doing, but you're also getting to walk away at the end of the day, and sort of getting the best out of the whole thing. So yeah, I always recommend volunteering at various different places, even if you're just volunteering at your local animal shelter. I used to do that, like, going through university, and it was so
Yes.
valuable to me. Like, I couldn't have a dog, I couldn't have a cat, but I could go, and a lot of these people are like literally they just want you to go walk the dogs and just hang out with the cats and just like keep them company because they're waiting to be adopted and they're not getting, like, you know, the best situation for themselves. So I think that's super valuable. And even if you don't have like an MMRC like we do here, volunteering is sometimes too, we have volunteers that just work in the aquarium and they just go talk to guests, and that sort of like guest volunteer experience, that one-on-one, like, is so valuable for you know, teaching people about the ocean and those types of things. So I love volunteers. I think volunteers are some of the most amazing people.
And they're doing something for community at the same time while still scratching sort of that itch of looking after
Yeah.
animals. So volunteer instead of buying a raccoon, volunteer at a raccoon. We can keep jumping back to
Yeah,
that.
there are like raccoons things. There's something for everybody, you know.
Yes.
And I mean, and that's how I got, like, my start was volunteering at the raptor rehab place, and I fell in love with those animals. And I you know, and so, like, it's, yeah, volunteering is an awesome thing.
The walk-
Everybody should do it at least some point in their life.
The walk the dog thing is something I used to volunteer for. It is an
Yeah.
amazing thing because you get to introduce yourself to a dog, and you do develop a relationship with a dog if you're there for a while and they get to know you.
Yeah.
But as you mentioned, you get to walk away, but you've supplied a service, and these dogs needed to walk. They had hip problems and that. And it's amazing how
Yeah.
these dogs' hips actually got better when they're not supposed to, just because now they're having that active exercise and they actually see an improvement. It was amazing. And I got to see the world. I got
And
to
I
do
think-
exercise.
I think having kids volunteer too is it's something that's awesome. Or I don't know what our volunteer program is going to look like in the future, but at the Vancouver Aquarium we used to have like a buddy system. So like you could volunteer even if you were young, like 12 years old, if you had your parent with you. And so, like, you know, then everybody gets to kind of experience that volunteer work, and it's yeah, I volunteering is
probably the best way,
a really
yeah.
really awesome thing to do if you have the time.
You mentioned
Puppies have hiccups now.
the domestication, and I'll keep it very short, where someone actually had in Russia, they kept wild dogs that were all brown. They were wild dogs, and they went
Okay.
through a process of, I think it was over 3 years, where they kept breeding the dogs. And eventually the dogs started changing their colors. They started developing black and white spots. And it was actually I need to find the video, I'll post it on my Discord, where the dogs were
Yeah.
actually within their own genetics becoming domesticated, and the colors would be more appealing to humans and we could relate to them. But they literally went from being all brown dogs to suddenly becoming the dogs you see on TV, the splotchy brown
Yeah.
dogs. It was amazing.
And
the
you know, some of
transformation.
that is humans are doing without even thinking about it. Like, you go, oh my gosh, like, just one day you get a genetic genetic mutation happens, and the dog is a slightly different color, and you're like, oh, I love this new coloration. Let's
Yes.
breed this one with this one. Now all of a sudden you've selected for that, and so then your next generation you're gonna have more likely to have that, and so humans, even if we don't even think about it, we are, and that's what happened when they very first, hunters and gatherers like domesticated wolves. It was just like, oh, this one's really nice, like hopefully it'll breed with this one, and then they've just like inadvertently selected for the like nicer, non-aggressive traits, and that's like how that whole thing happened, just like completely
Yes.
accidentally. Now it's much more purposeful, but
Yes, absolutely. We got any more questions on your side, Rhea?
Yep, we still have a bunch more.
no.
The next question, that was the part two to that question, is what is the hardest species of animal to keep as a pet?
Oh geez, I don't know.
Ooh.
Like that, I think birds are really hard. But I guess it just really depends on your personality. Birds
Yeah.
for me are really hard because they live a really long time, and you have to be really careful with your relationships with them to make sure that they don't only tolerate you as a human, and then you can't do anything else. They require a lot of attention. They require a lot of care. They're very loud. So
Very loud.
that's just my personal opinion. But there's not like a right or wrong answer to that. I
Mm.
guess, so much of it could depend. I have ferrets, and most people would find that like really, really difficult. But they really work for me and my lifestyle. So,
I know people take it for granted, but
yeah,
fish, because a lot of people just throw them in the tank and they don't change the filters, they don't clean the water.
yeah,
You can't put the water
yeah,
at the right time. You first have to leave it
Oh,
out. It's
yeah. Dude, how much will I pay to be
reptiles.
this person
Yes.
right
For-
now?
Oh my god, exactly. I would, you see, and there are volunteer programs like this. We can actually go to places and
Go
pet the
socialize
animals.
puppies.
This is
Yes.
the best job ever. It's like, I'm gonna go there and pet with this puppy.
Oh my god.
Look at that, and
Oh
dog's
my
like,
god. Stop.
just
Okay.
stop.
Anyway,
But yeah,
let's go.
reptiles
We
is
got
very
to
difficult.
get through a couple more. Reha, let's
Let's go. Move.
No, I was just gonna say, like, a really odd pet is my sister studied marine biology. That was her major. And we've had a lot of saltwater fish and whatnot. And she had a pet Samoan crab.
Oh my god.
Oh.
And that was very interesting.
Oh.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah, I
didn't
mean, I
know
think the
that
more
they
exotic you
molt.
get, the harder
harder.
it gets too sometimes.
I've
so.
had a lot of my house has been a zoo before.
Yeah.
Okay, so our next question on this list is, do the animals at the aquarium have access to veterinarians?
Oh, yes. There we go. I did it.
Yes.
Yeah, we
It's
have,
very simple.
we have staff veterinarians and staff vet techs, and yeah, and they are available 24/7. So they have their own set of veterinarians, and then for any kind of specialist, that type of stuff, we have access to like the world's best, people from around the world. If we need a cardiologist or whatever, we can bring in specialists from around the world too.
Can I ask that question very quickly? What is the difference between a veterinarian and a vet tech?
So veterinarians are actual doctors of veterinary medicine, being their title DVM, as you see in front of their thing. So those are the ones who've gone to veterinary school. Vet techs are very, very important, and honestly, I guarantee you that every single vet in the world would say they absolutely cannot operate without a really good vet tech. And they have gone to usually like 2-year school for a lot of the more like hands-on stuff, like a lot of times blood draws and stuff like that. Some of the tasks that happen a lot, taking care of like the anesthesia machine, monitoring stuff like that is what's going to fall under the vet tech sort of veterinary technician sort of qualifications, because the veterinarian can't necessarily, they're trying to do diagnostics, and they're trying to they have to do like surgeries and some of those really, really technical things. They can't be running blood tests and doing stuff like that. So the vet techs are taking care of a lot of stuff. Honestly, I think the vet techs do a little bit more than the veterinarians, just it's just different levels of that care.
Yes.
But vet techs are super important.
Sort of,
For the most
like,
part, they get paid pretty well too. So if you're thinking about it,
yes, become a vet, but it's sort of like in the same genre where I know this, by the way, and so please don't hurt me, but the nurses do a lot of the jobs that the doctors don't do, and they work a hell of a lot harder. But obviously,
exactly.
it's a doctor
That's
that
like
does
what
the
BC
thing.
is. What BC's saying here is a vet tech is like a nurse, and then so you've got your doctors and your nurses. Vet tech is like a nurse. Yeah.
But don't undermine nurses, because I know a nurse that
no.
they have their books are the same size. They're the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very hard. So yeah. Reiha?
Okay. Next question is, have you ever seen a visitor do something that was not good to the animals at the aquarium?
Oh yeah. I will yell at people for like banging on the glass. For some reason, people think this is appropriate, and they think that for some reason an animal would pay attention to them for banging on the glass, which has never happened in the history of animals ever. Like no animal goes, "Oh, fun, really loud, annoying noise. I'm gonna go over and check it out." So I've interrupted guests for doing those types of things. People have dropped things into the habitats. This happens all the time. People have dropped their cell phones. The sea lions eat it. The sea lions have to go to surgery to get them removed.
Oh shit.
And that happens on a way too regular basis. We have a literal drawer of things that have been pulled out of animals.
People, stop hanging out over with your cell phones.
Kind of the.
Yes. Are they trying to take pictures or
those
something?
are kind of the main ones. We had one lady who dropped her cell phone into the exhibit. This was on a long weekend. It was on the Friday of a long weekend, so nothing was going to be open again until like Tuesday. And a sea lion ate it. And she was complaining because she couldn't get her phone back, and our public relations person was like, it's inside the sea lion. Even if we got it back for you, it's not going to work. And she was demanding compensation for that, and and they were our person was actually very. I was worried because sometimes people try to get, and usually we try to be very accommodating to the customer because they are paying and stuff like that. But this became like it's literally going to cost us thousands of dollars to get this out of.
But they dropped the phone.
Not to mention, hopefully the animal is fine afterwards. And so and the person ended up being like, we should have you pay for the surgery that we have to like give the animal. Anyway, so stuff like that does happen. It's thankfully it's usually it's not super common, but people kind of, I find people really lose their minds when they come to places like this, and they just feel like a lot of times too, we'll just see like kids are just running around, and I'm like, it's not I'm not a babysitter. Like, I can't keep track of your kid for you. And if they get lost, I don't know what you want me to do about it, Like people just kind of like feel like it's a playground or something like that. I was about to say playground. So I think that there's some stuff that's for some reason it's just not quite well understood. Like, yes, it is an entertainment facility and we do hope you have a good time, but you still need to act
in a certain way
responsibly. So
hey, people let their kids run around in restaurants, and that drives me crazy. I never was like that when I was younger, so I'm not speaking out of turn. I sat at my table, people. So let your children sit next to you, otherwise they end up falling into zoos and getting poor animals euthanized and that because they fall in. And stop hanging over the banisters with your cell phones. Even I know that. There's normally this double line.
It's really, really weird. And it is, that's one thing I don't miss is like, you just start to sound like a broken record. Like, please keep your phones back from the glass. And then like people will be like, I have a strap on it. I'm like, it doesn't matter. I've seen these things fall in 1,000 times. And I you don't even understand what I will have to deal with if this falls in. Like, please just don't do it.
Gosh. Oh, puppies are getting fed.
But yeah. But for the most part,
hey, look, somebody tapping on the glass.
Yeah,
did he tap on the glass?
Yep.
Listen, the tapping on the glass is
it's
even
like,
a
what
rule
are you expecting
for...
to happen? Like, was like no animal has ever. It's so funny. Like, humans are just like some people are just not really like capable of learning. It's kind of the same as like some people will come up to an exhibit and be like, when has it? Nothing has ever responded to that ever in the history of animal behavior. I don't understand why people keep doing this. Stop
But
doing it.
that's
Don't
even a
do
rule
it.
we spoke to earlier. That's even a rule for fish aquariums. If you go to someone's house and you tap on the glass, the first thing they say is don't tap on the glass. I mean, you're sending a shockwave through the water. Fishy.
Yeah, it's just funny. I
Gosh.
just don't understand why people expect like what are you what
Like they're gonna
what
respond.
was
We need
supposed to happen?
we
I
need
don't
to
understand.
we need to put those people in a submarine, put them on the water, and take a hammer and knock the side of the submarine, and you see what happens.
Yeah,
Everyone's
yeah.
like, "Oh my god!" Now that's the fish,
Yeah.
or the otter, or the any animal. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
amazing.
But anyway,
These dogs are going
So-
at it.
short answer, yes. We're watching meerkats over on my screen now.
Oh well, the dogs are getting fed on my channel. They're getting
Oh,
the
no.
num, num,
They're
num,
being
nums.
fed?
They're getting
Oh
num
my
nums
gosh,
from the
okay.
mother.
I'm going back. Don't worry, people. Don't
They-
panic. Nobody panic.
They lost their minds when the mother walked in. Like, oh my
Ugh.
god, here comes the milk truck.
So cute.
And all you see is the mother's paws. Like, yes, get it over with.
All right.
Can
All
I
right,
see this?
our next question is: are there sea otters that have been released after being rescued?
Yes. So Monterey Bay Aquarium is a great example of that, and I can't remember the exact statistics, and it might have changed since I last checked it, but I think it's somewhere around like 50% of their rescued pups are releasable
Wow.
animals, which is a really, really good statistic. And those are pups, so pups are very, very difficult to do. That's really the only place in the world that I'm aware of that is rescuing, rehabilitating, and then subsequently releasing
How though?
sea otter pups.
Gosh, what are they doing
Goodness.
differently, or is the otters different?
No, what they're doing differently is they have a surrogate mother program.
Oh
so they
yes,
have a
you're right.
completely
You're right.
Yeah, they have that completely behind the scenes area where they have moms that are surrogate moms that and so they essentially raise the pups themselves.
Yes,
and
and they dress
it's an
in
incredible
face
facility,
shields.
and unfortunately not everybody has the ability to
Yeah.
do that or the facilities to do that.
All the
But
yeah.
there are places that have released wild sea otters too. Alaska Sea Life Center recently, what was it, Zippy? They released. Who had like the zip tie stuck on his paw. So there are releasing wild or like adult sea otters is much easier. We would be able to do that if we had like a wild sea otter that was not completely blind. Those are like
Oh, shame.
options for us. So yeah, it's totally possible. It's just very, very difficult when you have pups.
Someone actually posted in the chat earlier that opposite to that, Rosa was one of the examples where they let go of an otter and they had to bring her back. So
Yeah,
But
it does
yeah.
happen.
but I've seen that.
Oh, they
I
brought
forgot
her
about
back
that, yeah.
because she had a shark bite.
Well, that would be a very good reason to. That was good. Then they brought
Ouch.
it back. Oh my god! Ow! But jeez, oh god! But yeah, I've seen that rehabilitation. Is that the one where they wear the mask? The trainers have to like go in there like as if they're about to.
Yeah,
send
they try to not look like humans and yeah, definitely.
Science fiction outfits, but it's actually awesome.
Yeah, and that's good. Jedi Knight Joey is reminding us, guys, we're doing a charity stream on June 5th for the Alaska Sea Life Center. So so I hope you
Yes.
guys will all join us. That it'll be a 12-hour stream, so basically if you check in at any point during the day, you should you should see us doing something. We've got all kinds of fun things
It's gonna be fun.
planned for that, so hopefully you guys will come check that out. It's where they're at in Seward, Alaska is a huge tourist town, and actually cruise tourism is their biggest thing, which obviously cruise tourism is in like the dumps right now. So that's going to be June 5th, and !charity will also give you all that information on my stream. So yeah, come check that out on June 5th.
It'll be a party time.
Mhm.
We had a lot more questions to get through, but yeah, we got some.
Yeah, we might
in-depth
have to.
answers.
We might have to. Because what we could do
The
is,
part
I know you
two.
guys are like dying to do Wolfens, so we could do Wolfens next week, and then the following week we could come back to this topic.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know what
we
you
probably
guys are
could. Well,
thinking.
we do have some behavioral things that there's about 3 of them for you to answer as well.
Okay, just like unrelated to the actual topic.
Yes.
Okay,
So
well
that
we can
fit
cover
it in,
that.
yeah.
We can cover that after the AMA then, if we want to
Because-
just keep chatting.
Wolfens is
We're
gonna
at
be
the
awesome.
last 2 on our list, though, questions.
All right,
I
do
think we
we
can get
want to
through
just
it.
power through?
Let's get power through
We're
it.
going to power through it.
All right,
There's
let's go.
intended.
Let's
2.
go.
If you see me, my channel
This
dies,
one
the part's
is.
gone off. Carry on.
Oh, if you go poof, okay.
Yes.
Yeah. This next question is, what is the resilience against germs and viruses out in the ocean versus in human care?
Yeah, like significantly different. This is just with like, I can't remember if it's all marine mammals or just like whales, dolphins, and porpoises, but it's something like 75% of them are chronically infested with parasites, um, which is something that we do not have under human care. Now, most of those animals that have those parasitic infections do just fine unless something else happens. Because they're very used to it because they've lived their entire lives that way and their parents lived their entire lives that way out in the ocean. But under human care, if our animals were to get a parasite, it would be a very big deal because their bodies are not used to that kind of thing. And the same is true for any other like disease processes. Animals out in the ocean have immune systems like tanks, whereas our animals live in a cute little bubble where they have zero immunity to anything. So we do have medications and stuff like that. When animals are sick, they get medications as their bodies are just not capable of fighting those types of infections and things like that on their own. So yeah, it is one of the very big differences. It's also one of the things that you look at when you're introducing new animals is there has to be like quarantine periods, so that you can make sure that the new animal is not going to introduce an old disease to all of your animals that live in their nice disease-free bubble. So
That's a valuable point.
I was like, is JJ still there?
Yes, I am still here. I haven't got poof yet.
Okay, so our last question is, does the sock puppet feeding actually work for animals that aren't going to be released?
So the thing is, like, if you're not gonna release an animal, it's less of like it's not really super necessary. That's something I've only seen done in birds, by the way. It's not like you would take like an otter puppet and
how would you make it look exactly the same?
I'm not sure. So, and it would get like clam juice all over it. It'd be disgusting. So yeah, it's just not something that's necessary. And if you're going to have animals live with you, like not live with you, but like live under human care and be surrounded by humans all the time, like birds, for instance, you wouldn't necessarily like at that point you want them to to associate humans with good things like food and stuff like that. So yeah, so it's not really something that I think would be very necessary if you were you know planning on keeping an animal like under human care. It's not really like yeah, it doesn't really serve a purpose at that point. It's just kind of annoying, and you'd rather have the animal understand that, oh, okay, at least when humans are around, that means like food is happening. That's pretty sweet. So yeah, but good question.
Yeah, so is
now
that...
somebody's asking who's getting arrested. I don't know, but hopefully
yeah, I heard the
sirens have gone away, and I think that it's gonna be fine.
Like, which is very, yeah. I thought always being in my country, I was like waiting, like, is that me? Is that the sirens outside? Because we hear it all the time. But yeah, was that the last question on animal care?
Yep, that is our last question. Somebody just asked a question in chat.
Yeah, so you're just gonna have lots of different people taking care of the animal so that it's not just one animal. Often, a lot of times, if you've got chicks, you don't have just one. Like usually, you've got like a nest full of like most often this happens for whatever reason with like barn owls. We would see a lot of barn owls or a lot of gray horned owls, and or great horned owls, I mean. And so they're with nests full of, so they're also socializing with other birds, and then you've got people coming in, and yes, you would yeah, you have to put a fake mustache on. That's what you have to do. No, but you basically, there's lots of different people taking care of them and giving them food and stuff like that, and never just one person who really it's the same thing with people ask that question a lot with the animals that we work with. They're like, oh, are you the only one who trains this dolphin? No, because that would be really bad, because Like, what if she only wants to eat for me, and then I have to go on a 2-week vacation? Like, it's not a ideal situation. So yeah, always like rotating and keeping the animals, kind of associating humans with good things and not just one single human with a good thing.
Anyway, yeah. So thank you. I'm getting attacked by puppies on my own screen. Thank you very much. So next week, Wolfens? Because I didn't know about that until...
about Wolfens. I don't know what we're going to talk about. It's not like a very long topic. I'll be interested to see the questions you guys submit.
So I think we can start off with Wolfens and then fill it in with other questions, because I don't know how much. To me, I'm like, I didn't know about that. I was
Let's talk about, maybe it'll be more useful if I kind of like, maybe we'll start out where I'll like kind of briefly describe Wolfens and the situation, and then you guys can
maybe other combo animals. Maybe we can discuss other combo animals that we're not aware of.
Like hybrids.
Yes. Okay. I mean, like ligers. I discovered it a couple of years ago, but like those kind of things, like what animals can actually combine. Because I'd really
then there's so many things that we don't. Okay, we can't get started right now. I was about to go off on it, but we'll talk about it next time.
Talk about it next week. So yeah. Anyway, guys, if you want to carry on the discussion that we were talking about, please go over to KP's stream.
I think we're going to talk a little bit more about like the ethics and that sort of thing. I think that'll be a fun conversation to have.
I was trying to see if I had. God, I suddenly forgot I'll copy and paste it. I suddenly forgot the Nightbot tag I created for you, so I didn't have to type a channel in every time. But yeah, I'm gonna post it up there. I'd also like to give a shout out to our background stream, Warrior Canine Connection. Please go give them support when you can. They're part of the explorer.org, so there's a lot of Warrior Canine Connection streams. And yeah, of course, they accept donations. Look at that little puppy face. Why would you not donate to this? But yeah, I appreciate, because this is the one thing that I'm like, I did ask. So please, by all means, go give them support. And thank you. So jump over to KP stream now. Go, before I end the stream. Go jump there now so you can carry on the discussion with her, because my power's about to go out. So
all right, thanks, JJ.
Thank you so much, KP, and thank you, Reiha, for the questions, and thank you all for joining me on my side on YouTube side.